TitleMatchNetwork.com.
It is a pleasure to have with us none other than Tully Blanchard, a man who's been in the business for over 30 years. The date is October 2nd, 1999. I guess the first question is, I guess we'll talk about your college football career.
Okay.
What was that about?
What was it about?
Like, as far as...
it was about free education.
Right.
It was about not having my parents have to pay any money for me to go to college, and trying to be a star, basically. I graduated from a 4A high school in Texas, San Antonio, Texas, Winston Churchill, and where I started for 3 years at quarterback, and had scholarship offers from most of the Southwest Conference schools. Of course, nobody knows what the Southwest Conference is anymore because it's gone. But Southern Methodist University, SMU, was in Dallas, Texas, and I chose to go there. Hayden Fry was the head coach, and he later went on to Iowa for many, many years. I think he just retired in the last couple of years. And was a new experience for me. Wasn't quite what I had expected. It was preparing people for the meat market of professional sports, and because high school you're a volunteer and you play and you become moderately famous or get a reputation or have your name in the newspaper occasionally. It is kind of neat, but college it's a business.
Right.
You don't get paid. You get free education. You get room and board and things to eat, but you don't get paid. But they put the pressure on you as if you were getting paid, and so you got to make some adjustments there. And I don't know if I adjusted well or not. It took me. Hayden Fry got fired in the middle of my freshman year, and boy, that just devastated me. They changed offenses, changed coaches. The head coach that came in didn't know me or a lot of the players, and so all of a sudden you're dealing with a whole. You're trying to find a reason to be there,
Right.
I guess. And we didn't get along, and they moved me from quarterback to fullback, and I didn't know how to adjust to that. I came back to school my sophomore year, bigger and faster and better shape, because I decided that I wasn't going to get beat just because I wouldn't get run off. Just because they changed positions, because I could play football. I was an athlete. And they moved me from fullback to defensive end. And my gosh, I was really shell-shocked. I mean, I was 19 years old, and I was shell-shocked. And how in the world all this stuff was gonna all work out, I didn't know. And I ended up at the end of training camp, 3 days. I ended up second team defensive end, running down the kickoff team. I was a quarterback, wanted to play quarterback, and so I before the first game I decided to drop out of school because I didn't want to waste a whole year of eligibility running down the kickoff team.
Right.
And so I dropped out of school, and was really probably one of the best things that ever happened to me as a student. I was really not a very good student. I was smart, but I didn't try hard.
Right.
Because it came easy, so I didn't try hard.
Right.
Athletics didn't come easy. I had to work at it. And so I developed my ability, but in the classroom it was, what difference does it make? Right. You know, it's who you know, not what you know, in life. And so Excuse me. And so I dropped out, went back to San Antonio, and worked with my dad, producing the TV shows.
That was Southwest Championship Wrestling.
Southwest Championship Wrestling. I don't know. I don't think we were Southwest Championship Wrestling at that time.
Right.
Because it was still part of the Dallas booking office.
With Fritz.
And so you have the. I don't think we were. I don't think so at that time. But my dad still produced a TV show. It was kind of a unique territory in the fact that 3 different towns produced their own TV shows.
Right.
And it really made, I later on in retrospect would have made that territory very difficult to work for, and the booker didn't have near the authority except in 2 towns.
Right.
And so different towns pushed different people, and it really would have been a difficult place to have a booking office and get good talent.
That's what I was going to ask you. My next question was, between your father and Fritz, was there ever tension between those two trying to push their sons? Like Fritz would be pushing the violence?
Well, no. See, there wasn't any pressure, because when my dad and Fritz took the thing over, they were together but what my dad did was he was partners in San Antonio and that promotion, and he became partners in Corpus Christi and Austin, and my dad made an agreement with Fritz that he didn't want part of the office, and he wanted to be left alone.
Right.
So Fritz said, okay. He took the office. My dad wanted to be left alone.
Right.
So they still paid a booking fee and stuff, but Fritz's kids never worked for us. Likewise, I never worked for Fritz very much. But not to get one story ahead of the other one, but when I started having to do TV shows and you had deadlines and things being over with and places to be and times to be there, I learned how to get stuff done, which I'd never learned in school before. And so when I went back to school in January, I took a year and a half of school in a semester and 1 semester of summer school. I took my whole sophomore year. I took 22 hours in the fall, and then I took 12 hours in 1 summer session and put my nose to the grindstone. And by graduating from junior college, I didn't have to redshirt. I didn't have to sit out. So when I went to West Texas State up in Canyon, Texas, I was eligible to go on the field and play without having to sit out another year.
Right.
And so I ended up starting up there for 3 years, and graduated in 1977. And back to the other question, if you're watching this, we're really not confusing. But that was the conflict there.
Right.
You know, it wasn't a conflict just because we didn't work for one of the, each other.
Right.
They didn't want me to work up there, and not that we didn't want. Fritz didn't want his kids down there.
Was David like the only one really at that time no working, or Kevin?
Well, David and Kevin.
Kerry wasn't.
Kevin's the oldest. And
Right.
Kerry was still in school
Right.
at the time.
So that was late 70s then. About.
Yeah, I started wrestling in 77.
Mm-hmm.
And I came out, I started, actually, they changed the NCAA rule that you could be a professional in one sport and not in another. So I went and wrestled as my summer job. I went and came to work for Georgia Championship that summer, and then went back and played football my senior year. And then started in January in Florida and stayed down there until about May, and then came to North Carolina till December and learned from those two promotions, from Eddie Graham and Jim Crockett and George Scott, that it was just tremendous amount of knowledge, and took that knowledge back to Texas. And that's when we became Southwest Championship Wrestling. That's when we took, instead of taping our house shows to do our TV show, to get a studio type setting.
Right.
The first thing we did was tape matches before the matches for our TV show. We had no audience, so that really didn't work, but we still tried it for a little bit. And it wasn't that much different than Saturday mornings at TBS Studios.
Right.
I mean, 12 people in there some days. But the best TV shows that we ever did was when we bought a grocery store, and we could put about 400 people in on three sides, jammed into this grocery store, and the atmosphere and the energy and the adrenaline that was exposed was really a neat TV show.
Was that with Bob Sweetan, Scott Casey, and all those guys?
Yeah, that was all in that time. And
Was that in San Antonio?
yes, and that was late 70s, early 80s. It's when we produced the TV show that went on the USA Cable Network. All that, and we syndicated our show, and we ran El Paso, Midland, Odessa, Amarillo, Austin, Waco, Beaumont. The best our territory ever did is when Houston came with us,
Right.
and it killed us when Houston went with Watts, because it was your biggest money town, which it was always the biggest money town for Dallas when they were booking it. But it really hurt our business, because now your big stars were going to Watts,
Right.
because the one big money town. We did very well for a couple of years. I mean, we really did. We made a lot of guys a lot of money. We went broke paying wrestlers.
I was going to ask you what happened in Southwest. What led to its downfall?
We went broke
Right.
paying wrestlers. Most companies paid, like, if you paying off the gate, the wrestlers' end would have been like 28 to 30%. We were paying 46%. Not intentionally. And I've got to shoulder the blame because I made most of the payoffs out.
Right.
We had guys on the opening match who were making $900 a week average.
How many days a week did they run?
We ran probably 4, 5, 6.
Mm-hmm.
And, Houston was strong. And we balanced it out, and San Antonio ran, and we were doing good business. But, I mean, good business for San Antonio at that time was 15 to 20,000. And we were knocking that out every I don't think we ran every week, but I think we ran every 2 weeks. But we were doing TV every week, and then Corpus and those kind of things. And I mean, we had it cut down to the essentials where you could make money on a $5,000 show, and still pay the wrestlers well. But the one thing that I didn't do and didn't have the knowledge to, and I was too busy being a star and a lot of other things, I didn't have a real good discipline on where we were going.
Right.
I didn't have a disciplined vision, and we were doing well. I mean, God, they're like 3 or 4 years in a row. I mean, for a small territory like we were doing, the main event guys were all making $60,000, $70,000, $80,000. Virtually no trips. I mean, it was great.
It's easy.
And so there was a lot of time to be a screw up and a lot of time to do a lot of things. Well, by doing that, I didn't say this is where we want the company to be in 3 years. This is where we want the company to be in 5 years, 10 years. Had no vision.
Right.
And without vision, you perish. If you don't have a vision, you'll end up floundering, and you'll perish. And so most of the downfall of Southwest Championship Wrestling is attributed to me. I don't know that my dad would agree with that, but it is. I helped get it where it was,
Right.
but I also am probably the main figure of why it toppled. And then I was had a cocaine problem, and decided to. The only way that I'd get my life straight was quit. I quit wrestling. I quit my own company, and they went on for a little while. And the Bushwhackers booked it for a while, but they had a lot of good stuff. I didn't watch. I didn't pay attention.
Right.
Because I quit. I got me fixed. I started getting back in shape. I quit doing drugs. I quit drinking and got me back in tune. And I lost a lot of things financially. But that's when I moved to North Carolina.
Okay.
I right in there. I went to Kansas City for about a month, and my God, that's worse than Siberia. Kansas in the winter, Christmas, January,
Not good.
working for Geigel. You want to see some empty buildings. Good gracious.
Really? Bad?
Well, the world champion, Ric Flair, wrestled Brody, and I wrestled Buzz Tyler, so I got to take some of the heat from Bad House. Topeka one night, I mean, it was $2,200. And that's not exactly
Wow.
setting the world on fire.
Was there any threat, like, when the Von Erichs were, like, really, really super hot? Did they ever, like, how come they just didn't take over the whole state?
They did. They took over San Antonio.
They did?
Yeah. My dad's and mine partner, he signed the contract with the TV station.
Mm-hmm.
And our business went from here to here because one week they were watching Southwest Championship Wrestling. The next week they were watching World Class Wrestling. And that's when the Von Erichs did such tremendous business in San Antonio. Is they already had the wrestling audience, and wrestling fans didn't know. They don't know who the promoter is, and there's not a loyalty. They're watching wrestling. And our partner switched sides. He didn't like us because we didn't want to steal money at the gate, and he didn't like us because he came from the car business. He is. I heard my mom and dad sent me a newspaper article last week and said that he had been caught doing something and serving 15 years in prison now.
What led to I guess Southwest getting taken off USA and then they get replaced with All American Wrestling from WWF?
Well, that is another thing that you can attribute to vision. Okay, we got on. We were the USA Cable Network's #1 rated show. They really almost. I did something one day that was probably not wise, but I did it anyway. I said, we'll show them how. I said, television stations are run by ratings.
Right.
Go ahead, what's next?
We were just talking about USA and
And I was telling you about how...
An unwise decision, but you did it anyway.
Yes. Well, I understood. See, I studied radio and television in college because I knew I'd be in the wrestling business.
Right.
And it doesn't take you too long to grab a hold of the fact that the pros were not looking for any 5'11", 195-pound wishbone quarterbacks. And they couldn't throw anymore because I'd been in a car wreck. I was in a real severe car wreck, which if you ever noticed, I've got a scar underneath my right arm that runs from just out of my pec to the middle of my back. And all my lat muscles were severed when I was, before I went to West Texas State. And it really hindered my passing ability. like disintegrated it. So I knew that there was never going to be a chance for me to play pro football, which I had always dreamed of. And when my arm was healthy, I could throw with anybody. I irrelevant of who they are, I could throw with them. I wasn't tall, but of course Doug Flutie makes it. You don't have to be tall, but when that happened, it killed my football career. Even though I still played and enjoyed and all that kind of stuff, but I knew that my life would not be football as soon as I got out of college. And so I studied because I knew wrestling would be in my life and I would be in it promoting. I always thought promoting more than wrestling.
Right.
And so I studied television because that's the future of, that was the whole business. And so we had the opportunity to pitch the USA Cable Network, and we got a deal with them. We had to pay them $7,000 a week to get on the air. And we had some visions on how to make the TV show pay for itself, but didn't have the knowledge and didn't have the people around us with the knowledge to make it happen. So you got a fledgling. Fledgling would be like an infant, but no, we weren't fledgling. We were thriving. But when we lost Houston and we lost our TV show in San Antonio, our cash flow died.
Right.
Okay? So now it is like a huge monkey on your back to pay $7,000 a week to be on the air and not have the show generate any revenue for you.
Right.
We tried to get a hold of some other promotions to see if they would help. We were not NWA because now Fritz is running San Antonio and NWA and all that garbage.
Right.
And so we were like the outlaw group. You know, we're like independents are kind of now.
Right.
Except we were not just independent, we were an outlaw. And so I wanted to show the USA Cable Network that we were valuable to their programming. So I said, I forget just exactly what it was. It was give us your favorite match or tell us what you want to see.
Right.
You know, you pick a match or something like that. And I put the USA Cable Network down, their phone number down. Their switchboard was inundated on Monday, and they called up highly irritated. I said, well, golly, there's a lot of people watching it. So anyway, but at whatever point they decided that they didn't want to have us owe them any more money.
Right.
And Vince either paid the deal off and
whatever.
He came in heavy duty and had the know-how and the power and the machine behind to make it happen.
Right.
And they did. And he's certainly riding the crest of the wave. So,
what are your memories of Gino Hernandez?
My memories of Gino Hernandez. Whew. He wanted to be Elvis Presley.
Right.
He loved Elvis Presley. Wanted to be like him. And he was. You know, it's a whole lot of talent. And it's just sad.
Right.
It really is. In fact, I called him in 1984. I said, Gino, I said, you need to come to North Carolina and quit screwing around out there. And he liked running around with the dope dealers and the gamblers, and he liked rolling in that high life.
Right.
I don't know a lot of the stuff he did, but I know some of the stuff he did. I've watched him do some of the stuff. And there's a lot of people that tell me that he was, in fact, one time I talked to his girlfriend up in Dallas, or one of his girlfriends. and that he owed a lot of gamblers money and that they killed him. And the official story is that I guess he OD'd, and I know he owed a lot of gamblers when he was in Houston before he moved to Dallas, and I knew he'd run around with some highfalutin people that in the underworld, that whether it was organized or they were just highfalutin dope dealers or whatever.
All right. From there, you talked about you left the Southwest, you went to Bob Geigel's promotion. How did you wind up with Crockett?
Well, St. Louis ran like Houston ran. St. Louis always booked its own thing just for St. Louis once every, I think, 3 weeks. And a lot of the undercard always came from Kansas City because I think Geigel and Harley had a piece of St. Louis. I'm not sure. And so that helped their under guys get money and got them on a big show. So in the 1st of January or the end of January or the middle of January, sometime in January, I was booked in St. Louis. And I'd been doing a little thing on their TV with Buzz Tyler. And we went out and tore the house down. And I'd already known Jimmy because I'd already worked in North Carolina, but never as a main event type guy. Well, this was 7 years later, and I had wrestled countless times with Wahoo and countless times with Buddy Roberts, who was Dale Valentine, and had John Valentine critique every match, every move. And you wrestle Wahoo 500 times, and you wrestle and have Johnny Valentine critique your matches every night. You're an absolute idiot, unteachable if you don't learn something. Well, I'm very teachable, and I learned a whole lot because those guys were successful every place they ever went. They weren't just successful in a region. So the people that I imitated in my career were the ones that were successful every place, not just in a certain area. And there were a lot of those guys in the business at that time.
Who did you work with when you first came into the promotion, NWA?
When I first came to Crockett,
Right. This would be what, 80?
84. I started February 14th of 84, Valentine's Day. Oh, let me finish the story. I mean,
Okay.
tell me if I don't finish the story.
Okay.
I mean, you guys are listening. I'm talking. But we were in St. Louis, and I was out at the Marriott with Dory Jr. and Crockett. And I told Jimmy, I said, Jimmy, you need to hire me. I'll make you a lot of money. And so he asked me to call him when we weren't drinking. And I called him on Monday, and he gave me a job and a starting date. And so I came out to North Carolina. And when I first got here, I want to say I had to work with Weaver, I think. And I had to work with Jay Youngblood some and Mark Youngblood some. But that was just to get going. And then I think I beat Mark Youngblood for the Mid-Atlantic Television Championship. And then Steamboat and I worked at Starrcade, 1984. And we had wrestled, what did I do? I changed something. I did something. I think 84 was JJ had the money. So a picture of JJ and the money. God, isn't it horrible when you don't remember all this stuff? Anyway, I had the TV title, and I wrestled Steamboat 5 times in Greensboro before Starrcade. I want to say we did 20, 30, 45, 50, 4 times. 50 minutes, all of them Broadway. And then Starrcade, we wrestled for an hour. Was the time limit for the TV time. And so that was a tremendous boost to my career. And then right after that, we picked up. It really took about that long. Business was down in North Carolina at that time. And Flair was traveling as a champion. We got him back, and Dusty came in as the booker like in September or something. And Jimmy had 3 bookers, one for each state. And that wasn't working. It wasn't really a good idea. Then when Dusty came in, Dusty was trying to do some certain things. And he called me into his office. We were in Richmond, Virginia, and he called me in. He said, "What do you do?" He said, "You've been a booker. What do you do to get this thing going?" And I told him point blank. I said, "You put the best against the best. That's the way you do it.
Right.
You take your best performers and put them out there against each other, and it'll work." And he said, "Well, Wahoo wanted to work a program with me." And I said, "Listen," I said, I needed to, Dusty and I were talking, and that's when I really started to learn all the political, go ahead and move on. How the politics and all the garbage goes on, you know. And see, I'd never really done that kind of stuff, because when you play football, it is who does the best job. It's really not that political at a younger level. When you get higher, it starts to get a little political. I didn't get high enough to where it actually does get political, but anyway, so and this is what drove me to interject this in right here, is I never wanted anybody to ever say Tully Blanchard got a push because his dad was a promoter. I never wanted to be talked about like Goulas's kid, and I never met him. Wouldn't know him if I walked up on the street today. I never wanted anybody to ever say that Tully Blanchard did not deserve his spot, right, even in my own town. And likewise, I was very seldom the main event. I was always second or third down the road. You know, I deserved a push because I performed. But anyway, so I'd come to North Carolina first, and I was here, and things were starting to work. And Starrcade, we sold out in Greensboro. It was a good card, and I wrestled Steamboat, had a great match. And not too long after that, Dusty and I were in Richmond, and I forget who I was wrestling. Might have been Mark Youngblood, might have been Junkyard Dog or somebody like that. And Dusty called me in and wanted to talk about it, and what would I do? And I said, I put the best against the best. I said, that's just what you do. And he said, well, Dusty, he said Wahoo had come to him and wanted to do a program with him. Well, Wahoo, you know, I love Wahoo to death, but he was trying to take care of Wahoo, and I understand that. I said, Dust, this is my take on the deal. I said, you got Flair, you got me, you got you. I said, you put Wahoo and Flair together and let them go beat the piss out of each other. And I said, you put me against you because I'm going to make you look the best.
That's one of the questions.
I said, Wahoo's going to get out there and beat the crap out of you. And so Wahoo worked an angle with Flair, And I worked an angle with Dusty. And we did the thing with the Perfect 10 contest and got Baby Doll.
Right.
Which was not too long after this. And I told Dusty, I said, this is what we do. I said, you come on here, and ever since you've been here on TV, whether it was 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, I don't remember. I said, all you've done is gone out and beat people in 30 seconds on TV. I said, what you need to do is, I've got the TV title, and we'd already switched it, I think, we'd got TV in Atlanta, and we switched it to the World Television Championship.
Right.
And I said, Dusty, you go out here, and it's a 20-minute time limit, and you go 20 minutes. Nobody expects you to go 20 minutes, and you do something different than the fans can expect, and it'll be a good 20 minutes. And it'll be better for you and your career. It'll be better for the company. And that's what we did. And I actually, jumping ahead, and I don't know all the questions that you've gotten in mind, but if you look back at it, Dusty devoured heels his whole career. They'd have short runs, and then they were gone. I had the longest run of anybody ever with Dusty, and came out the other side still a star. It was amazing.
Right.
Get beat up for 4 years and very seldom ever win, just occasionally,
Right.
and not get devoured, not kill you, because it killed everybody else. And so I'm going to pat myself on the back for that. But we were very, very successful. The company was very, very successful. And everything worked well.
You think there was ever a problem with Dusty when he was booking? He pushed himself as a top guy. You think that's a problem in the business?
I think that's a problem for anybody that is the booker and the star.
Right. What led to the Four Horsemen concept? How did that all come about?
By accident.
That's
Because they booked a 6-man tag.
who was it?
Arn and I and Rick. This was probably the end of 85, I guess. I was still had my thing with Dusty. We'd already done the Baby Doll deal, and no, we hadn't done the Baby Doll deal with Dusty yet, I don't think. I don't remember, but I wrestled Magnum in there.
Right.
Yes, I did. That's exactly what it was. I'd already done the thing for the Great American Bash, and Dusty had won Baby Doll for 30 days.
Right.
And then her appearance back was when she handed me the quarters, dressed up like a
Cop
Cop.
knocked out Magnum.
and I knocked out
From the
Magnum
United
for the
States.
United States heavyweight title, which set up
Starcade.
Starcade I Quit match. So Flair had already switched. Arn had come in, being an Anderson and Flair being a cousin and all that kind of stuff. And Dusty was with somebody, Magnum, something 6-man, and so it was us. And Arn said that, and I forget, I really forget the interview, but Arn was the first one that said Four Horsemen, or said Horsemen. And the old Notre Dame backfield from the 50s was called the Four Horsemen. They were pestilence, famine, death, and destruction. And they named their 4 backs that way.
Right.
And so we were called, they were called the Four Horsemen, and so that was where it all came from. And how it caught was a group of college kids from Greensboro. started dressing like us because our gimmick was
Right.
dress up, sunglasses, coats, gold, ties, whatever it might be, you know. And they haven't paid for a deal, so we'll cover up the label.
Actually, I remember seeing those kids on TV all the time.
In the Greensboro Coliseum, there's a whole row of them. They sit on the second row ringside with flashcards and sunglasses. I said, "My God, flashcards at a wrestling match?" I was blown away by that. And so I was in the hallway back outside our dressing room with Crockett, and he looked at me and said, "This thing's really getting over, isn't it?" I said, "Yeah, matter of fact." And that's when they started putting the promotional machine to it. And that's why it got as big as it did, because it didn't come out of some smoky idea room.
Right.
It happened. And the fans grabbed a hold of it. And it exploded. I never knew why it exploded. But until about 2 years ago. 3 years ago, maybe. Why? Because it was really a phenomenon.
It was awesome.
I mean, it was unbelievable. When I walked in, when I did the pay-per-view in Philadelphia in '94, maybe.
Slamboree with Funk.
Yes. God, they were mad at me that day. That's a whole other story. But anyway. But when I walked out and I watched the crowd the rest of the night and I held up four fingers, it was as big as anything that night. And that blew me away because it had been 94 to 88
Right.
the last time I was in Philadelphia with as a Horseman.
That was the night you lost the belt with Midnight.
Yeah, in September of '88. And then we've been back to the Spectrum, but not in that building.
Right.
And so, how can you stay that over? How can you move? 6 years later, and then when I walked out in ECW, when they had me up there the first time I wrestled Shane Douglas. I mean, it was. I don't know whether they would admit the size of the crowd or the amount of advance or something, but some people said it was one of their bigger crowds and earliest sellout type things, and the match was a bad idea, but I can get into that later too, maybe if you ask. But anyway, what question were we asking here?
We're just talking about the success of the Horsemen.
Okay,
How
the
it
Horseman
started.
thing, and it was just wild, and the reason that it worked, and it worked to the level that it worked, is this. If you remember what we talked about, we very seldom talked about our opponents. We didn't sit here and say, "Oh, we're going to beat somebody up and we're going to rip your eyeballs out," and all that garbage. I mean, how many times and how many different ways can you make it entertaining that I'm going to beat you up and I'm going to annihilate you, and there's not enough words in the English language to articulate it. But what we talked about was being a horseman, being a world champion, being the best, and what, if you think about it, what that actually is a doctrine on life, how to live your life. And that's what people bought into. They bought into us telling them to be the best. I mean, I can remember being on TV. I said, "Hey, the important thing, this is the symbol of excellence. It is be the best."
Right.
Whether it is a student, a football player, a screw-up, a whatever, be the best. Make somebody talk about you.
Right.
And people grabbed onto that. And that's what we continually talked about. And so we actually had a cult following to whatever minute degree. And, man, it was wild. And they keep trying to put it back together. But they can't put it back together because they don't have the blueprint.
Right.
They don't understand why it got big the first time. And see, I mean, I didn't understand it until I really have thought about it over the last number of years. If you don't know how something works, you can't ever redo it. And
That was one of my questions to defend you personally when you see like put other horseman groups together, like
they're not the Horsemen.
Right, exactly.
I mean, when they wanted to put the original Four Horsemen back together for the pay-per-view in some time,
right,
in a Flair for the Gold or something, I don't know, 92.
yeah, I think that's what it was.
I flew to Atlanta, talked to Ole, talked to Dusty, and they offered me a job for $500 a day. I left. I didn't say anything about them. They wanted me to make my appearance starting at the pay-per-view, which was 2 months away. I wrote them a letter. I said, we don't have a deal. I said, change your storyline. Don't advertise me. Probably should have sued them for advertising me.
Right.
And they knew I wasn't coming. I talked to Ole last year, and he said, why didn't you come? They knew I wasn't coming. My gosh, nobody sent me a plane ticket. If they didn't know I wasn't coming, somebody had mailed me a plane ticket, how to get there.
Right.
So, I mean, that's all hogwash. But, I mean, from what I understand, in fact, I even bought the pay-per-view that night to see how they were going to get out of it.
Right.
You could almost hear on television that when they announced the first three and they were waiting for me to come out,
Right.
that it went
down. Yep. Who was it? I forgot.
Paul Roma.
Oh,
that's
right.
when they
Ooh.
about Roman.
Yeah.
And I mean, Paul Roma is an awesome specimen in the gym. And actually, Arn and I at the WWF had some good matches with him and Jimmy Powers.
Right.
But he's not Tully Blanchard. And he was physically bigger than me. A lot of people physically bigger than me. But when I had something about me that when I walked to the ring, I was bigger than I was.
Right.
And you couldn't replace me with him or anybody else. I mean, they've tried, and the closest thing they've had to it, and really the closest thing they've had to it is here last year or so, is because Flair really put some energy into it. And Arn stepped up, but they. McMichael's a great football player. You know, there's not the chemistry's not there. I mean,
Right.
Benoit's a wrestler, and Malenko's a wrestler, and you know, it just wasn't there.
Right.
And as I told jillions of people all across this country, as I travel and speak and go to the prisons, I said, how can you have the Horsemen without me? You
Sure.
can't.
When you were with the Horsemen, who did you like? I guess Ole left first, and then they
Ole got fired. Ole made Dusty mad and got fired.
They brought Lex in.
We brought Lex in. Helped his career, I guess. Didn't really do a lot one way or the other for us.
Right.
Before that, how did you associate the Horsemen in making Crockett go nationwide? Do you think you guys were the main reason?
No, we went main reason because we got two TBS.
Right. But did you...
Television rules, okay? Horsemen didn't... I mean, we were tremendous to the company, okay? We were... In football, we would been called the franchise players. I think that's evident to when Arn and I left in '88, end of '88, what happened to the company. That was not our design, but anyway, no, we got Crockett paid. That whole deal was this: Barnett, Jim Barnett, Ole Anderson, the Briscoe brothers, and there may have been another partner, but I don't know. But those four for sure were partners in Georgia Championship Wrestling, which Barnett had always been buddies at TBS and First Wrestling Show, and they always have wrestling on at 605. They took the company away from Ole and gave their stock or sold their stock to Vince.
I remember that.
And that's when they went to New York. All of Briscoes and Barnett all went to New York to work, and Ole was out. Vince didn't want to come to Atlanta every Saturday and do a studio show. He wanted to send his syndicated show down. And I don't know the exact amount of money, but Crockett paid and bought the TV time from Vince. I heard it was $1 million, but I don't know.
Right.
It was kind of funny getting $1 million from your competition. Today, Vince would probably prefer to have not sold it to him. But anyway, he made the money, and we got the TV time. And we went every Saturday and did the TV show, and then started it on Sundays, and we started the live clashes and that kind of stuff. But I mean, the reason we went nationwide is because cable television was going nationwide, and we were syndicating our shows. We had a 1-2 punch, and in our peak in 1987, we were in 227 markets. You take the top 227 cities in this country. That's exposure.
Right.
Huge exposure. And cable television was growing every day. New homes every day. And that's how we, I mean, it was hand in hand. We were new talent nationwide that could perform and get the job done. And that's what happened.
Was there ever any problems behind the scenes with you, Flair, Arn, and Ole, as far as all going on doing promos at the same time, egos clashing or anything like that? No, it was all.
Ole wasn't there long enough.
Right.
I mean, it wasn't egos clashing. I mean, there weren't. When you know how it's done and you know what's happening, you know, people that have egos, there's a time for an ego and there's time not for an ego. Okay? And I knew how the business was run and how it was, and I couldn't whip anybody, and it didn't make any difference if I could.
Right.
But most of the people in there couldn't whip anybody either. You know? And the toughest guy in the card was usually the guy on the second match. And so, you know, I mean, I knew I wasn't beating anybody. So I mean, my dad taught me when I was young in this business. This is show business.
Right.
And that's what I went out. It was very hard show business, but it was show business.
Whose decision was it to have Luger as Ole's replacement?
The Bookers, eventually. I mean,
Did anybody object to it? Or
well, nobody knew him. He just started.
right.
I mean, we brought him in from Florida. I mean, you look at him, he looks like $1 million.
Right.
He didn't stay real long.
Yeah, you did that thing at the bunkhouse, right?
About 10 months. A year almost.
Was it a whole year?
Almost. I think like January to December.
And then really the strongest group that we had that were all performers, because when Barry came on. And which wasn't too long after we wrestled Barry and Luger on the first Clash. And Barry switched not too long after that.
Right.
And became one of us. There's really, I'll tell you the truth, there's really no telling how big the Horsemen could have gotten if the promotion would have pushed it. I can remember for almost 3 years, every now and then you hear a conversation, well, we need to split you guys up. We need to split you guys up. And I remember in the Boston Garden, Flair and I and Arn talking. I said, what in the world is their problem? My God, they're always trying to kill us. And we'd wrestle 6-man, 8-man, 6-man, cage, barbed wire. We got beat every stinking night. Everywhere. And they never ever put any money back in the bank. We could perform and perform and perform and perform and get beat and get beat and get beat and get beat, and people would still pay to see us. If they would have took care of us a little bit, my gosh.
All right.
Golly, I watched that match. When we go into the prisons and speak, we take some of our old wrestling matches. That's why I was asking you guys about your tapes. I need tapes because I'm bored. I'm bored with looking at the same ones.
Right.
The inmates are not, but I wrote letters to my former employers, and they weren't really. They didn't even respond, much less cooperative. But one of the matches that the inmates like to see is the Magnum TA match, Starrcade match of 1985. And I got beat up. I really, not to just interject a bunch and get off your list of questions, but I mean, when people come up to me and say, that stuff's just all fake and this and that and the other, and of course I can watch it and understand why they say that. I really can. It is, I think back to 1980, maybe 2, 3. I quit defending wrestling many years before I got out. And I said, but I did defend me. I said, come sit on the front row and tell me what I do is fake.
Right.
Tell me when I hit a guy, I don't hit him. And when they hit me, that they're not hitting me. Of course, most of the time I was wrestling guys like Wahoo and Ronnie Garvin and Magnum and guys that just beat the crap out of you. But that is an uneducated response. It's a programmed because they don't understand. They don't understand the wrestling business. They don't understand what it is or anything about it. And so they say, that's fake. Well, what they're asking is, did you know who was going to win? That's what they're trying to ask and don't know how to ask it.
Right.
And I have spent too many years answering the questions, and I quit answering them. I said, ask what you want to ask. And I do that today a lot. I said, ask me what you want to ask me. And they're wanting some long, drawn-out exposition on it. And I don't have the time, nor the energy, nor the inclination to explain professional wrestling. But that's it in a nutshell. But whether it's fake or not, my gosh, I mean, I got beat up every night. I bled every night. Oh, God, you cut yourself with a razor blade. Okay. You want to get me fired up, okay? Whoever gets this tape, all right, you paid however much money for this. In 1985, it cost you $10 to buy a ringside seat. You could get in for $8. For your price of admission of $8 so that you could have enjoyment, I scarred my body, I cut my face with a razor blade so that you could have enjoyment. Not a single person that you will ever deal with in life where you pay somebody to do a professional service for you, whether you buy a ticket to go to a concert, will give you that much dedication, that much return on your money as me and my contemporaries did of that time. To think a doctor would cut himself with a razor blade so that you could is ludicrous. To think that some entertainer or some movie star would actually, so that you could have $4, $8 to get in. I think you get the point. Nobody, no profession, and there were a lot of guys in my profession that didn't do it either, would cut their arms, cut their face, just so that one person would say, golly, what a match. Golly, did you see that? Want to call me a fake and call me a social outcast for what I did for a living because they don't have enough insight, not intellect, insight, discernment to grab a hold of it. I think of the hours and hours and the miles and that I've driven and go spend $85 to go to Broadway to watch him repeat the same words every night. You could follow me around and you'd never see the same match twice. It would be new, it would be innovative, it would be energetic, and you got all my blood, all my sweat, all my energy for 40 or 50 minutes or 30 minutes every night. Whether I was drunk, hungover, high. Some of the craziest stuff I did when I was high. So, I mean, they liked it better. Now they just call it extreme. So but I've covered all that now. I don't think I need to say anything else on that.
Okay.
But anyway, getting back to the Magnum match. I don't know why. You got to keep me in focus sometimes. Man, Magnum beat the dog out of me that night. It was big. It was the biggest payoff I ever got. $12,000.
What are members of the barbed wire match with Dusty Rhodes from the Bash? The ladder.
Barbed wire matches were hard to work and they were yucky, and I've got scars on me from where the barbed wire's hooked in my fingers and hooked in my clothes and arm, and some of those are self-induced and some are not. And, you know, people wanted to see them. I hated them. The worst match in the world is a barbed wire match that you don't bleed in. And I've had a couple of those because the athletic departments wouldn't let you bleed.
Right.
Good gracious. Anyway.
Getting back to Horseman days, what led, well, first question is, what Horseman group did you like working with the best?
Oh, it didn't make any difference.
All right.
the Horsemen really were Rick and Arn and myself, and,
Right.
and the other one didn't really make any difference as long as the core was there.
Okay.
And that's I mean we were a Horseman group for a while when it was just Rick and Arn and myself and JJ.
Right.
I remember that. I don't remember.
What was your take on the Bill Watts situation when Bill Watts sold out? Did you feel like I know we did an interview with Jack Victor and he talked about the potential to have a inter-promotional feud at the time, and it seemed like when a lot of UWF guys came into the company, it seemed like Crockett or whoever was booking wanted to squash all those guys and didn't want to use their talents to the fullest.
I was too caught up in what we were doing. To really have the concept was there to have a farm system.
Right.
We did it some in Southwest Championship Wrestling. We would bring 2 or 3 guys from Georgia Championship out. But the thing that I said, and I might have been the booker at the time, but I might not have been too, Wahoo was there. So what we did in the mid-'80s was we would take a match and send it to UWA stuff. Well, what you do by doing that is you create class differences. You have the proletariat and the bourgeoisie. And what you have was the superstars from national television and the local stars from the local television.
All right.
And what I did in Southwest Championship Wrestling was I said, give us 2 guys, but we'll wrestle. Wahoo would wrestle one, and I would wrestle the other. I remember I wrestled Tommy Rich, and Wahoo wrestled Baron von Raschke. Well, what that does is elevate your talent and put you on their level because you go out and perform with them. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
If you bring, oh man, we got the hot match, Tommy Rich and whoever, and bring them in as your main event, then you make your own talent, you drive it down, its credibility
Right.
of being stars. And there were probably a lot of things that I would have done different doing it in that fashion. They tried to create their own TV show and do kind of that thing so they'd have places for other guys to work. And it was difficult because we would send guys out there. We would send our hot match off Atlanta TV out there to draw the money so that everybody else could get a payday. But you make the local talent that you're trying to make and draw money to, you make them look like the local talent.
Right.
And so, concept-wise, there probably should have been some things done different. Watts made a killing, and he got out of it.
Getting back to you and Arn, back in '88, I believe it was. What led you guys to go over to the World Wrestling Federation?
Actually, the whole deal was this. My contract had run out with Crockett in like April. They were not pushing to renegotiate my contract. I was one of the first 5 guys to sign a contract with guaranteed money. And it was not guaranteed money per week. It was a yearly thing.
Right.
So we never changed our pay procedures. It's just if my income would not have reached a certain level, he would have kicked in at the end of the year. And my first contract was for $300,000 guaranteed, whether I got hurt or whatever. And I got 75 the first year, 100 the second year, and 125 the third year. And man, that had never been heard of. And so I just man, this is great. You know, Flair got one, Dusty got one, I got one. I think Magnum got one. Maybe Slater. I'm not sure who. But in the meantime, the Road Warriors signed a big contract for $500,000. They're paying their manager $360,000, for heaven's sakes. Paying Paul Ellering more than you paid me and Arn.
Right.
Is there something not wrong with that picture? But I'd signed my deal, and I was happy. When my deal was up, I wanted to sign a contract. I was supposed to fly to Dallas. They'd moved the office to Dallas. And my first day off in like a month and a half, and I missed my plane, and wasn't that big a deal. You know, we got to get this thing done, and we'll do it again. I didn't want to fly to Dallas anyway.
Right.
Didn't want to move to Dallas. So they never tried real hard to meet me again. And Tully's faithful, and he'll never do anything, and he's loyal, and da-da-da-da. Well, in the process of this time, the negotiation for the sale of Crockett Promotions to Turner Broadcasting was going on. And during the summertime, they interviewed. Okay, they weren't in the hurry to meet with me, but TBS's head people, the guy that eventually hired Jim Herd, and I forget his name, but we met with him. All the stars had to go meet with these people, and they'd ask you questions, and really, my problem is I'm just honest, and never really been around the corporate world or anything like that, so it has always been to my own detriment, unfortunately. The guy asked me and Arn this, and this, and I said this, and this. I said, there's a reason why we lost 3 TV stations this week because of ratings. And getting back to your point a long time ago is there comes a point whenever you got the booker, and this is not against Dusty, this is against anybody that ever had that position, where when you've only been at the Florida territory or Georgia territory, one guy could carry the load. This had got bigger than anybody. And it was new ground. So, I mean, in Dusty's defense, we'd gone someplace he didn't know what to do.
Is that why I think what led to Crockett's failure?
And we had got to the point where the guy calling the shots couldn't be the star anymore because we needed more stars.
Right.
Okay? And we were bigger than that. And so I said that in a meeting to these guys at TBS, and it made Crockett mad, and it made Dusty mad, but those people asked questions and opened up Pandora's box, and Crockett called me on the phone and told me I wasn't loyal. I mean, this is the same guy that cuts himself 250 times a year. 300. We wrestled 335 times a year, days a year. Twice on Sundays. So sometimes you're cutting yourself twice on Sunday. And I wasn't loyal. My God, I wasn't loyal going out there and getting beat up by the Road Warriors who were making $500,000. And Paul Ellering stood there and made more money than I made. And I wasn't loyal. Man, I'm telling you. You guys wanted a shoot interview. I can't be politically correct. And Crockett called me and told me I wasn't loyal. And I said, is that right? Hung up the phone. And the travel sheet came out the next day or so, or the next week. I forget how just far it was, but we were in Houston, Texas, and the travel sheet with who was on what planes, and they took the jet 4 different cities, and my name wasn't on the list. And I said, "What's wrong, JJ? I'm not." I said, "Why am I off the list?" And they just took you off the list. I said, "Is that right?" I told JJ, I can remember him bend over in his briefcase. I said, "Is that right?" I said, "I'm 35 years old. I don't need to be spanked." I said, "You want the championship belts tonight, or you want them tomorrow night in Philadelphia?" I said, "I'm gone." And JJ came back and said, "Tomorrow night in Philadelphia." I said, "Okay, I'll be there."
We videotaped that match, by the way.
Did you?
Yeah. Snuck a camera.
Did I look tired? I'd been up all night.
I remember Marriott Hotel. You guys were on the phone. I think either you or Arn, and you're like, "Come on downstairs already." There was a big, I think, Flair called in the lobby. So one of you guys, either you or Arn didn't want to come down.
After the matches?
No, it was before the matches. You guys were drinking, I think, before the matches. I remember.
I wasn't in a good mood. And they wouldn't talk to us in the dressing room. And Dusty hugged Arn and walked right by me and growled.
After all that.
So I left. And Arn came with me. I didn't expect that. Hadn't talked to him. Didn't ask anybody. I just left. And then he came, and we'd already talked to Vince, but that was for other stuff.
So years of all that, and that's how they treated you.
Oh, yeah.
So you ended up with WWF, and I think your first program in was Rockers, right?
Yeah.
How would you compare WWF to the WCW and NWA?
How would I compare it?
As far as the way it was run, the people?
Man, I could get in. Vince calls the shots. So you've got a guy that is not, back then, wasn't in the ring. So you had somebody that was only concerned about business. The thing that Vince did is this. He took people from the other company that at that time, not so much to benefit his own company, but to hurt the other company. And when I discovered that, it was way too late. Way too late. And it really disappointed me. And really, I mean, here you are getting ready to go and do things. And when we traveled and wrestled the Rockers, I mean, we had tremendous matches. They told us they were going to put the belts on us. And in every major city in the country, we had to do a job for the Bushwhackers.
Right.
Okay.
And watch them tear down Four Horsemen signs in the audience. And had 2 in Charlotte, North Carolina, too. And they couldn't draw down here back then. I mean, we brought in everybody, Hogan and the whole deal, and only did 7,000 people at the new Charlotte Coliseum. And our last show, where Arn and I wrestled Midnight Express and same card in Philadelphia, our last night, we did 13.5 or something, doubled the crowd. So it was very disappointing, to say the least. They put the belts on us because they felt they had to or whatever. And the which was a good business thing for Vince, because what we actually became was the main event in the C towns. And we had enough A towns so we'd make decent money, but And we made good monies, and the pay-per-views made up for a lot of stuff. But I mean, we took the C-Towns from being big losers to money makers. So on his part and in his defense, it was great.
Right.
I mean, here we took these guys. It killed the other company. When we left, after they got done advertising us, their business plummeted.
Right. 91.
Okay? 90, 89, 90, 91. But now Vince, instead of losing money with his C-Towns, was making money. And so, but we weren't making any more money.
Right.
I mean, we were gone more, traveling more. My gosh, it was horrendous. And having to buy our own tickets home, and I mean, they were cutting costs and all kinds of silly stuff. And then to go through the pressure of guys telling on you all the time on the road, and you know, I mean, I should have filed unfair business practices because it was okay to smoke pot and take pills, but it wasn't okay to snort cocaine. You know, I was I should have had a discrimination suit. But you know, and having to watch what you do and who you talk to and what you say to people. I mean, it was a good learning experience. It really was. But it was not wasn't a memorable time in my life, although it had some really, really high points. I mean, never would I have ever walked the aisle in Madison Square Gardens if I wouldn't have went to the WWF.
Everybody talked about that. Anybody we've ever done a shoot interview with, that's their dream, to walk MSG.
Madison Square Gardens is the epitome of entertainment and sports. There is no greater building with more nostalgia, more great events. There's an energy and an electricity. I heard Magic Johnson talk about there's 3 great buildings: Madison Square Gardens, Boston Gardens, and the Great Western Forum. I would tend to agree with that. But none like Madison Square Gardens. And so I got to walk the aisle there as world champion and main eventer, and was a big thrill. And I learned a tremendous amount about efficiency and promotion and TV production and stuff from them, because they do it right. I mean, no matter what you think about Vince McMahon, no matter what I think about Vince McMahon, he's a genius. I mean, he has taken the wrestling business, his wrestling business, with oftentimes less talent, less ability, and year in and year out produces a money-making product.
Right. How long was your contract there for?
It was actually just an open, nothing. I mean, it wasn't anything special. I mean,
Right.
we weren't guaranteed anything. We weren't anything. Just come and go to work. So it was.
So Arn basically decided to go back to WCW, and then there was a problem. They said
No,
that,
not at all.
with what?
There wasn't a problem at all. What I told Arn was, I said, when Turner gave everybody big contracts.
Right.
Flair used us leaving to his greatest advantage. He killed him with a contract, close to $1 million a year, or he'd leave too.
Right.
So that worked out fabulous for him. Our mistake is we didn't stay as a group. We really could have negotiated in strength as a group.
Right.
We didn't. I told Arn, I said, they can't draw. They're not drawing. They're not doing well. I said, we ought to be able to go back and get a good contract, put the Four Horsemen back together. In 6 months, have them back up on top again, and then go in and hold them up for $500,000 a year or something,
Right.
and clean up, was our strategy. So I called Jim Barnett and threw a feeler out and said, well, what do you think about, putting the Four Horsemen back together again? And he went and talked to Jim Herd. Jim Herd called us on the phone. And they offered us $250,000 a year for 3 years, $750,000 contract for 3 years. And I said, okay. And then I went and asked Arn. I said, what do you think? So we were actually doing Colorado Springs or something. We were in Denver when we made the deal. And then the next week at TV, or the next day in TV, or whatever, we gave our notice to Vince. And that was a bunch of conversations back and forth that I ended up catching a lot of heat over. And he wouldn't let us go in 30 days. We wanted to give a 30-day notice. And he wanted 60 days. We've already sent out all the publicity. We've already got started. Survivor Series. Right. So we negotiated some deals there and got our Canadian tickets paid for, and that you didn't normally get, and some stuff. And we were going to finish up after Survivor Series. We had 60 days. And then in the middle of that period of time in Philadelphia, there's a lot of things happening in Philadelphia. When I was in the prisons last week, it really all started coming back. I mean, the last match with the NWA,
right.
Saturday afternoon at the Philadelphia Spectrum, and no show Saturday night. We were off on a Saturday night. I mean, that was unheard of. And so I'd played a little bit the night before and was looking forward to a fun-filled evening in South Philly, and walked into the Spectrum knowing I'm leaving. I want to say we'd already dropped the belts on TV, but they hadn't aired yet.
Right.
And it was a drug test. Well, WWF at that time only tested for cocaine. They didn't care anything else that you took. And only tested for cocaine. Well, I failed. I knew I failed. And was expecting to be gone Monday or Tuesday when the test came back, because it's normally 2 or 3 day test. They didn't tell me for it till November 2nd because they needed TV taping. They were doing a Saturday night's main event, and they wanted me and Arn to do a job for the Rockers. And we had the Survivor Series thing and wanted me to do a job for Ultimate Warrior. And set up Survivor Series. And then Vince called me the next day after I'd already got to Rochester, and that I failed the drug test. And WWF's policy was suspension on your first deal. 6 week suspension, then you come back to work. Well, we only had, 22 days left. So he suspended me. I flew back to Charlotte and left Arn up there to work, and didn't figure it was any big deal. I mean, the other company never had a drug policy at all. And today, don't really know how they found out. I mean, I only told a couple. Vince told them, or the people I told them. But Flair called me at 1 o'clock in the morning on November 13th and told me that Jim Herd had reneged on the deal because I'd failed the WWF drug test. And which are the events that led to what I do now. Because at 1 o'clock in the morning on November 13th, man, I'm laying there. I don't have a job. And I got Mercedes-Benz to pay for downstairs. I've got an image to pay for. I've got a lifestyle to pay for. I've got everything riding on this, and the two companies that you can work for are all of a sudden kicking me out. And I laid there and I got mad. I said, man, screw them. They can't kick me out. I mean more than they mean.
Right.
I mean, all the rationale that you would go through your mind. And I got remorseful and said, God, surely we can work this out. I mean, surely I just got to talk to somebody. I mean, this is, I'll agree to drug tests or anything. It doesn't make any difference. I need my contract. I mean, I need that $750,000. And because this was my big hurrah. This was my big score. I was 35 years old. I needed 4 more good years because I didn't want to end up the wrestling business like my dad or like Ivan Koloff, or beat up, broke up, not being able to play golf, not being able to have any quality of life because you've gone out here and taken bumps.
Right.
And destroyed your body and not have anything to show for it. So, I mean, I wanted to be there, and I wanted my big game plan to be out by 40 and be in an office booking or something like that. And so all of a sudden everything's gone. And at 4:03 in the morning, after wallowing in my own self-pity, it only took me about 8 years to be able to describe that as self-pity. Because a lot of us feel it, but we don't say it. I said, Jesus, take over my life. And it was the first time I'd ever said the name Jesus when I wasn't cussing somebody. So I'd never been to church. I wasn't raised to where you would call on a spiritual God or spiritual solution to your problem. I'd always taught to just put your nose, work harder, overcome, fight, don't give up, that type of mentality. And right when I said, Jesus, take over my life, there was a calmness and a peace that came in that I felt that I'd never felt in my life. Never, ever. And didn't understand it, didn't know what had happened to me. And this voice told me that your life is going to be okay. And I relaxed and I fell asleep. And I woke up the next day and looked at my girlfriend that was with me, and I said, I need you to go home. Took her to the airport and sent her off. Never really expected to see her again. Now I'm married to her. And we had 4 beautiful children. But God, that first few days was just unbelievable. And I really had not a clue what had happened to me. And my dad called me on Wednesday, I think. And he said, what's going on? He said, you don't sound the same. I said, what do you mean you don't sound the same? He said, well, you're not cussing.
Huh.
I couldn't get 3 words out of my mouth without an F this or an MF that or a this or a GD something. You know, it was embarrassing. Cussing is nothing more than laziness, because you're too lazy to think up something to say. So when you cuss, you use one word that has 43 definitions. It's just it's an adjective, an adverb.
That's true.
And I was the worst. So I was, so I started seeing these changes in me and feeling a little different, and started reading a Bible, and 6 weeks later started going to a church. I was too embarrassed to go to a church because I wouldn't know what to say to somebody. If somebody recognized me, we were so recognized.
Right.
what's going to happen if I walk into a church? And so I can tell you, and I've told this to many inmates, I needed a change in my life because I didn't know, but I didn't know how to change. I can remember sitting in the garden in August defending against demolition, sitting in the dressing room when it's over with, and the only thing I thought about doing was getting out of there and getting drunk, because the only happiness that I had in life was when I was high. And it wasn't happiness, but it was the only time all day long that I was out of pain. And so you went from relief to relief to relief, day after day after day, and I needed a change, and I thought my change was going to be make more money and change companies and get away from WWF and get back to a group of people that liked us and wanted us, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so when the thing was over with, they didn't give me a contract. So I sat there for a month not talking. They froze me out. Arn, and they drilled Arn. He had a wife and a young baby, and just drilled him. They said, we paid for a tag team. You're a single now. And they gave him $156,000. Second year on his contract, $200,000. Third year, $250,000. So it cost him $146,000.
What led you to going back Slamboree in Philadelphia with Terry Funk? How did that come about? You said there was heat earlier.
Oh, they called me and wanted me to do it. I mean, asked me to do it.
Mm-hmm.
They'd called me a couple years earlier, and I guess I think my motivation more was a personal thing of, can I do it still?
Right.
Was my career, there wasn't a good ending to my career. Maybe I really haven't analyzed that personally yet.
Left on top.
I left on top, and that is probably awesome, because nobody remembers me anything else than that. Even the few times I've done independent stuff is still on top, even though I've done some jobs and made some people mad, or not done some jobs and made some people mad. But the thing with WCW, they called and asked me to do it. They paid me $2,500. I said, great, all my expenses.
Right.
Okay. So I got in shape to do it, and I figured I'd go up there and look good, that they might offer me a contract. Flair was booking and everything. I said, so I went up there in shape. I mean, I was ready to roll.
Right.
And I get there, and they walk up and say, how do you want to do it? I said, how do you want to do what? Well, put Terry over. Well, Terry's, in the meantime, gone from a Legends match and then cut himself a contract, which is neither here nor there. But nobody called me. Nobody told me in advance that's what they wanted.
Right.
And I said, nobody's asked me to put him over, and I'm not going to.
Right.
Unfortunately, I was a bigger star in Philadelphia than Terry.
Right.
And Terry's mindset was still me, the college boy, living at his house when he was the world champion. Well, Philadelphia, he might have been king of ECW at that time, and row 4 of section on the front row, but the other 6,000 people in there were Four Horsemen fans. And on pay-per-view, I wasn't going to do it, because I travel and make a money. If you want something from me, ask me in advance.
Right.
I'm not just going to. Doing a job has never been a problem, getting beat. But it was always for a reason. I mean, I never just went out to get beat. I mean, I don't need a job that bad. I don't need to be a wrestler that bad. And so they were furious. Terry was. Whenever Terry starts to click, he's really mad. He's really mad and keeping it suppressed. And they were all mad. Bischoff was mad. Flair was mad. But nobody ever talked to me. I mean, they sent Bill Dundee over to me. You know, I mean, my gosh. And, you know, so I mean, they paid me, and I went out, and Terry tried to guzzle me, and I kept getting up from his pile drivers and backflips, and it was kind of humorous. Actually, I never saw a videotape of it, but it was kind of humorous, I thought. You know, I wouldn't go out there. I wasn't a job guy. I never was a job guy in this business. Never will be. Never was.
What did it contribute your success to? As far as, because you were never a huge guy, and back in the 80s, you had to be a monster to, you know, what did it contribute your success to?
Doing it right. Having the proper vision every night. My goal every night was to steal the show. And I would venture to say that's not most guys' vision anymore. And my long-term goal was to be the best performer that this business has ever seen. The most believable, the most legitimate, the most entertaining, the most energetic. And don't know if I ever got there, but I might have got close to the top.
You came to ECW too at one point. Was it 90?
95.
95.
Early 95.
And you worked with Shane Douglas 2 times. What was that like? Was there any problems? I heard like rumblings that there could have been problems with you and Shane working together as far as a finish or something.
Oh no.
No.
No. The problem was I wrestled Shane the first time at the big crowd down to the whatever the arena is called.
ECW Arena.
ECW Arena. And they wanted an hour. I told the people in Miami the other night, I said, it was good for 35 minutes. The next 10 were suspect. The last 15 sucked. But this is the problem. Shane Douglas is not a heel. Okay? May want to be, but he's not. He's too handsome, looks too good, and people didn't believe him as a heel. Likewise, I'm not a babyface. Never been one. My arrogance, my natural arrogance always came through and made me a horrible babyface. So my success was being me.
Right.
Well, you got two people that are naturally not what they are. Okay? And you're wanting an hour. Well, if I couldn't be in control in the ring, which the babyface shouldn't be, then I'm at somebody else's disposal. Okay? So now you got a guy over here that's not really, doesn't have a mindset of what a heel is all about and what the focus is all about. And that's not against Shane. I mean, he just hasn't had nobody teach him at that point. Trying to get a whole hour is impossible. And besides that, I only had a week notice, and I wasn't in good enough shape to do an hour, and told him that going in, and we should have had a plan B, but we didn't.
Right.
Then I came back and wrestled Shane again, some school or something.
Yeah, North Catholic in Philly.
Yeah. And the problem was me. Okay? The problem was what they wanted from me was just to come and put Shane over. They wanted their guy beating one of the Four Horsemen. Well, I was out on that. Put Shane over for a reason, for a rematch, for part of the program, for part of what you're doing today, not just to take away from my past and the credibility that I bring when I walk in the place. And then cover it up by having 13 guys hit the ring. I said, no, I'm not doing that. If you want me to put a guy over, I'll put him over right in the middle. I don't need 15 people running down there.
Right.
And so that's what we did. And I went out, and actually we had a good match, but I switched heel, and we had a good match, and I put him over, and it was done, and that was the end of my ECW career, and they haven't called back, and I never called them in the first place. But I mean, that's, you know, I'm not to the point where I need to be in wrestling, and I tell these independent people that now. I said, I don't need this town on my resume.
Right.
This is how much it's cost, and I will come. I will guarantee you that I'm in shape and can produce to the level that I'm capable of today.
Next week, what is it? Next Sunday you're working on?
Next Sunday's a pay-per-view.
Stan Lane.
With Stan Lane. You know, I am not the performer that I was when I was wrestling every night. But I will be in cardiovascular shape where I can get up and down and take bumps and give the people the most amount of return on their money as I can. And that's where I'm at.
Did you still follow the business as far as watching Titan or WCW?
Very little.
Do you let your kids watch it? Or?
My children aren't up that late on Monday nights.
Would you?
Would
if
I?
they were older with the product, how do you feel like?
I never watched it really growing up.
Mm.
You know, my children don't like it when I've taken them to the matches. They don't like it when I get hurt or when I sell and that kind of stuff. So probably not.
Who were? Sorry.
Go ahead.
Who were the top 3 workers that you worked with? You wrestled Flair once, right? You guys did an angle, I think, on Mid-Atlantic where you guys ripped each other's suits up.
Yeah, just a very, very short little thing. I mean, it really wasn't much.
Are you disappointed you never had a program with them? Do you think
No.
You didn't?
No.
No.
See, to wrestle the world champion at that time, you weren't ever going to win. So it could do nothing but hurt you.
Right.
So, I mean, keep me away from that stuff.
Right.
You know, I mean.
What's he like as a person, Rick?
Flair?
Yeah.
Just about what you'd think he'd be. See, that's one thing that is so. You're just actors. No, you're not actors. If we were acting, the people that are good, you would know it. It would come through. The successful ones are an extension of their own personality, their own selves, and they have the ability to magnify it because of television and because of the arena and the stage. But it's their natural persona. I had a natural. My dad told me when I was growing up. He said, "People either love you or hate you. There is no in between." And my natural, whether it's a look or a glance or whatever, was that of a cocky, conceited, arrogant type person. All of those attributes are not warm and fuzzy and mom's apple pie and good old boy and that's why I was never a good baby. Nick Bockwinkel was the same thing. Nick Bockwinkel's career never blossomed until he became a heel.
Sure. Couple more questions. Dusty Rhodes parking lot angle, where you guys tied him to the truck. What are your memories of that?
I thought it was a pretty good idea.
Great.
And
since it was.
What was your favorite arena to work in? Or favorite town?
Oh, gosh. Man, there was a lot of them. We had some really, You talk about just roaring. Philly was strong. Baltimore was strong. Man, when that arena in Baltimore was sold out, they just roar. Charlotte Coliseum, the old one, was 12,000 people jammed in there. You know, I mean, there was just a tremendous amount of buildings. I never really had one favorite one over another one. The ones I was going to make the most money in were always my most favorite.
Do you think like the Bash Tour in '86 when they did the stadiums everywhere? Do you think that was innovative or a good idea because they brought in the country music stars? It's kind of like WWF really didn't do that per se, like every night. Like, do you think it was a good idea or a bad idea for the company? And was it financially successful?
It was for me. I don't know if it was for them. Well, the WWF had already done it in '83 when they got Cyndi Lauper and the deal in there. You know what we did. I say we as an industry, and it started back then. Is we became big show oriented. If it wasn't a bash or a Starrcade, it wasn't a big show. So you ended up taking away from your everyday matches. You knew a title wasn't going to switch in Greenville on Monday, you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now you know nothing's going to happen until a pay-per-view. Or now, because of Monday nights, on television.
You think that TV killed the business as far as all house shows?
House show business?
Replaced the business.
Well, yes, it has. Absolutely. But, I mean, it started a long time ago.
Right.
And it even started describing, and Vince was probably the first one that ever said it. How can you duplicate the TV show in a live house show? That much energy, that much boom, boom. I mean, just hits you. Right. Bing, 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 bing. You can't do it. And then what today makes the problem worse than in 1989, who can perform to that level? So now you don't have the in-between stuff that's exciting and the smoke and all the stuff. Well, when the bell rings, who knows how to make it exciting anymore? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So now, yeah, the everyday house show businesses.
Couple more questions. Did you have a problem ever doing? Well, you did the angle with Magnum Tate with the bat when he was
after the car accident
in the TBS studio. Did you find that odd to do that?
Since he wasn't able to really wrestle with the bat in the TBS studio.
Mm-hmm. What'd I do? What I hit him?
You hit him with the bat, and then Dusty came out. You hit him in the face.
The angle was with Dusty.
Yeah, but you hit Magnum. Whose idea was that to bring Magnum back, or did he actually think that he was actually going to make a return at that time? Or
no, we were just using it. Just showing you what a real low life scum bucket I was, and probably sold out a lot of buildings with Dusty because of it. You know, I mean, it was.
Whose idea was it for the War Games? And did you...
Dusty's or somebody's.
Did you enjoy that, or...
They were long, hard matches. You know, I mean, they were all long, hard matches, but I mean, it was... the concept was good, and there again, the concept is only as good as the performers. And as long as you had Rick and Arn and myself and Barry, we could make any concept good.
Bash 86 was awesome. I think that was the first one, right?
No, 87.
87.
Yeah. In the Omni.
Dark Journey, did you prefer her coming out as a valet over Baby Doll, or the same? Did you work with her?
No, Baby Doll was one of a kind. they'd had other women managers way long ago. I mean, the Sheik did it, and Angelo Poffo did it, and it's probably why Randy does it, because his dad always did it. But Baby Doll was a unique. It was a phenomena in itself, also, and she was by far the hottest valet ever.
Sure.
And we were looking for Sunshine, actually, to be my valet. And over Christmas, we were in Miami, and Nicola was wrestling as the Lady Giant or something. And I looked at her, and Dusty and I went and had a meeting and said, she's it. And when I walked out on television with a 6'2", 215-pound, pretty, photogenic woman and said, this is the most beautiful, perfect woman, it was instant success. And I knew how to make a manager be a manager. I mean, there's most managers are only out for themselves instead of the product.
Right.
And not only did I have the knowledge, but it was job security for myself. If you let the manager have all the heat, then he can have anybody out there getting beat up. So you can't do that. So you had to keep control over certain things. And JJ was kept in check and in that role, and Nicola was too. And she was, nobody ever touched her. I forbid it.
Right.
And the only time she ever did anything was when she handed me something. I think the first time she ever did anything was when and I did it. She actually rolled in the ring, and I used the fire and burnt.
Dusty.
Was it Dusty?
Yeah.
I burnt Dusty. She never actually did anything to anybody, but she distracted, and I did the damage.
Right.
So that way, not all the heat went on the manager.
Right.
And then you become a pawn.
Right.
Which is a big mistake that a lot of people make. But again, lack of knowledge. And by not ever letting anybody touch her, it made so much more when Dusty slapped her that one time.
Right.
When Magnum kissed her the one time. You know, it was just it just heightened the emphasis. And so.
What about what was your deal with wrestling in Japan a few years ago with Fujinami?
They wanted me to come over and wrestle one time, and I did. They wanted to have more. I mean, I don't know. I mean, they never asked me to come back. I mean, I went over there and got beat up in Osaka and got a trip to Japan. And
Is that your first time there?
my first time there, my only time there, and I always wanted to go to Japan. And the plane ride was unique. The food was good. The conversation was weak. The place was jammed. I met some nice guys from England, and went down to the Hard Rock Cafe somewhere in Osaka.
Right.
And ate after the matches, and I almost wished for a moment that I was a wild and crazy guy like I used to be,
Mm-hmm.
because I had some people that were in the press over there that I'd always been friends with, and they'd come to San Antonio, and I'd always wined and dined them, and I probably would have had a wild and crazy time that I didn't have. But I'm glad I didn't do the wild and crazy time, because that part of my life is over with. So.
Do you still, I guess, I don't know, talk to any of the Horsemen or Dusty or anybody from Crockett back then?
When I run into him,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I mean, I work out at one of Flair's gyms, and I run into him occasionally. His wife, his daughter just got married. Yeah, and I saw Arn and Rick and Ole and JJ all in New Jersey on August the 29th. At the first time in 13 years that all four of us have been in the same place at the same time, autograph signing thing. So, we spent, of course, you didn't get a lot of chat time, but Flair and I flew back on the plane together and talked and saw the guys. And Arn's still having to travel a lot.
Yeah.
So,
what are your memories of some of your matches with the Rock and Roll Express?
they were always great matches.
All right.
Ricky Morton and Robert Gibson were just very, very talented guys, and they were over, and nobody got beat up like Ricky Morton. I mean, golly. I mean, handsome little guy, and you beat him up, and he knew how to fight back, and it was just, it's a pleasure when you can go out there and have people just scream from the minute you walk out to the minute you go back. I mean, you've done it right. And it freed up a lot of pressure so that you could be creative, if that makes any sense.
I don't know if you answered last time. Who, in your opinion, would be the top 3 workers in the business that you've worked with?
The top 3 workers or the top 3 that have influenced me?
Both.
Wahoo McDaniels was probably one of them. I never worked with Jose Lothario, but he taught me, and I refereed a tremendous amount of matches that he wrestled. And he was probably as good a babyface as there ever was. He could sell, come back, and fire. He was just phenomenal. So did Wahoo. Wahoo could sell and come back. He wasn't a great wrestler, holds type thing, but Wahoo made money. Every place he ever went, he could sell and come back, and people believed him, and he was fabulous. I had great matches with Magnum TA. I had great matches with Barry Windham, and Barry Windham was one of the finest work. I've had tremendous matches with Brad Armstrong.
Right.
Brad never was a big star, but you want to just go have a match with a guy. I mean, sell and work and come back and look good. He was great, I've had great matches with Dusty. Dusty could sell and come back. We've torn not just for 5 minutes. I'm talking 20 minutes, 30 minutes. Arn and I had some great matches with the Road Warriors. I'm listing a lot of guys.
Right. No, that's good.
But and they weren't the greatest workers in the world. And, but man, I'm telling you, in a situation, of course, there wasn't too many guys that we didn't have good matches with. That's, some guys were a little harder than others.
All right.
But I enjoyed my work. So, I took pride in what I did.
Is there anything you want to say to maybe some fans that are watching this videotape? A message you would want to give? Or
about
anything you want people that saying, where's Tully Blanchard?
What are you up to?
Man, he's going in and out of prisons.
Huh.
Telling people that are cast out, down and out, beat up, that their life can be changed through the power of the living God, Jesus Christ. That is what I am all about. That is all I'm about today. What happened to me, which will be 10 years ago next month, was a real thing. Just like flunking the drug test was a real thing, and me being extracted, that's really how I expect it, because it's not logical. If you sit back and think about logic, it's not logical for everybody that you've ever heard about in wrestling that went to a rehab center or flunked a drug test or was kicked out or was caught or arrested or anything. It's not logical for me not to be in the wrestling business. Whether you like me or hate me, it's not logical because my performance spoke for itself. And for me to be extracted, not at the end of my career, not at the start of my career, but at the peak of my career, at 35 years old, when I had 10 or 15 years left in me, if you use the guys that are still doing it as the yardstick. It's not logical, except there was a supernatural hand on my life that said, hey, I want you to do something else. And that's what the Bible says. The Bible says all things work together for good to those that love God and are called according to his purpose. And my purpose that God has given me and called me to do is to take the message of love and hope and restoration to, in this country, as many of the 2 million people that we have incarcerated as I can possibly do. And we have seen, just in North Carolina in the last 2 years, in North Carolina, just over 9,000 men and women. We've had over 5,000 this year and then 4,008 last year, just in North Carolina prisons. And it is, unfortunately, people don't have any hope anymore. They don't have hope in our system, in our government, in our president, in anything. And the hope should lie in our hearts. And our hearts should be with God. And that would change our entire country. I don't want to preach for a long time. I've already preached to these guys. But that's it. If you listen to this and you see this and you've listened to my honesty about the wrestling business and about the people that I had contact with, I'm just as honest about the power of Jesus Christ to change a man's life. And not just change it, but to fix it. And that's what happened to me. My heart got fixed. My life got fixed. I'm not a big TV star anymore, and I don't make a lot of money like I used to. And some people would say I'm not successful anymore. But I'm going to tell you, you go talk to one of those 9,000 people that has either hugged me or shook my hand in these prisons, and they might tell you something different. That's what Tully Blanchard's all about.
Watch thousands of exclusive shoot interviews right now on TitleMatchNetwork.com.